Welcome to episode 103 of the Loane Hockey Podcast, where today we're going to be talking about some standouts between Colorado and Anaheim from last night's matchup. And in terms of the game was really good overall, and Colorado came away with a 4-3 win in overtime and a little bit of a back and forth game. And it was a good ending, and Colorado really showcased their ability all across the board in terms of their defensemen being active as always, and then their forwards being active all across the forward group as well. And having activity from many different forwards is really important when it comes to their style of play and how they're able to generate offense. And we're talking about Ross Colton as one of the biggest players, one of the biggest facets to this game was he had 2 goals, 5 shots, and he stood out all across the board. And he was really good. You notice him as a checker, you notice the details as a checker, but at the same time, you really notice his ability to finish and have skill within his game. And he's a guy that stands out in both realms. He's a guy who can finish checks, he can make plays, he can score in and around the crease. He's heavy, he's hard, he does a lot of very different things in terms of how he's able to check, but also how he's able to forecheck as well. And Miles Wood, again, in that same realm as Ross Colton, where he does very similar things, very similar style, above average skill, and he stood out as well. I've liked Nikolai Kovalenko to start the season, and when you're talking about Colorado's system, every player in their system is going to have speed. Every player in their system is going to have skill. Every player in their system is going to have some sort of puck possession ability. So with Kovalenko, he brings all of those attributes at the same time. What I really like about him is how he's able to use his frame under pressure and how he's able to adapt that in many different circumstances. And he can do this off the rush. He can do this in corner battles. He can do this on the half wall. He can do this in a lot of different scenarios. So, very effective player overall. And then speaking of bigger bodies, Mikko Rantanen, 3 assists for him in this game. He was excellent all across the board. Excellent two-way winger. Excellent in terms of using puck protection, body position, being able to use his size to his advantage. A guy who stands out in terms of using that power forward ability, but also that small forward skill. And he's a guy that is very active in terms of how he's able to generate offense, how he's able to create inside the offensive zone, how he's able to create on the walls, create space, and just be efficient in terms of how he's able to create offense for the Avalanche. Cale Makar, we could talk all day about Cale Makar in terms of what he's able to do and how he's able to generate offense and how he's able to defend using angles and surfing and being able to use a stick and he's so efficient as a modern day defenseman. And he's always, I talked about this before in previous podcast episodes. He's always wired. He always has like a element to him where he's always jumpy, which is a good thing because it allows him to get moving off the hop and get speed going right away. And so that gives him an advantage in some ways. And he's always active. You always notice him in every single situation. O zone, D zone, neutral zone, whatever it may be. You always notice him involving himself to some degree inside the play. So he's always standing out in that realm. And then we go to Anaheim's side. I really like Leo Carlson to start the season, and he's in for a big second season this year. And as a top six forward and top six center, he's a guy that can stand out in all realms. Like you want him to be a player that uses puck protection. You want him to be a player who can dominate using size, his ability, his reach, his frame, and being essentially an Ozzy Kopitar like center. You want him to be that. You want him to have that two-way ability with also the skill. So nothing much else said and needs to be said about him. Ryan Strome, I've really liked Ryan Strome and a guy who's a little bit older, a veteran, a center, and brings some scoring ability. He has a good first touch on the puck and how he's able to generate in terms of shots and releasing his shots. And he's very efficient as a shooter and he creates a lot of volume. And it's one of the bigger attributes when it comes to his game and his shot ability and how he's able to create shot attempts and shot volume. Similar with Troy Terry. Troy Terry scored once in this game, same as Strom. And Troy Terry is a natural scorer. He can score from anywhere in the ozone. He has a lethal shot, weapon of a wrist shot, and a cannon of a one timer. And Olin Zellweger is another player who I really like throughout this game. And similar to Makar in a sense, but I'm can't keep this very specific because it's hard to compare anyone to Makar. But in terms of angles, defensive angles, being able to defend at the blue line, at the defensive blue line. That's where I see a little bit of similarity in him in terms of Makar, but it's obviously a little lopsided. But at the same time, Zellweger brings that defensive modern day ability where he can surf, he can use angles, he can use forward skating to close gaps, and he can cut ice in half using his feet. So a lot of footwork is involved in defending nowadays. So it's really important for Zellweger's style of play. He's not a physical defenseman. He's a positional and instinctual style defenseman where he's going to look to shut you down with his instincts and positional habits. So he stood out all across the board, and those were some standouts in this game.